Okay, what's going on, everyone? This is the All Things EV podcast, and this is the first time that I've ever had a guest on the show, and this is definitely fitting because it's episode 10 of season 1. So this is going to be sort of the wrap up of season 1, and I've got my friend, buddy, Tesla Bull, hyper change frontman, Gali Russell. So welcome to my podcast, and thank you so much for taking time to come on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean.
Absolutely. So this is always really funny. Like whenever we've done stuff like this, we talk a lot offline through text and through phone calls. So I'm looking forward to this being just sort of an extension of these conversations that we have about Tesla, about the electric vehicle market, about
Mhm.
solar, about energy. So I think it's going to be a good one that people will really get into.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we have so many great conversations, then we're always halfway through like, "Man, we should have turned this into a podcast. What are we
Totally.
doing?"
Totally. Yeah, we should hit record on this one.
Yeah.
So now we're actually going to do it. So we're gonna talk about some interesting topics. I thought about starting this one. I can hear New York City in the background there. That's awesome. So I thought about.
Wait, let me close my window.
Okay, cool. So I thought about starting with who is Gali from Hyperchange. I think a lot of people know who you are, especially people listening to this podcast. But how did Hyperchange come to be? What's the like 2 to 3 minute explanation of how Hyperchange came to be?
Yeah, so, my name is Gali. I'm 26 years old, live in New York City, and have been investing for, maybe 10 years at this point or 12 years almost, and just super passionate about the stock market, read Warren Buffett's books in high school, had an investing club, ended up going to NYU to study finance, and just loved investing. But when I got close to Wall Street, like going to NYU, having friends working at all the major banks, like, just realized, like, I hated the culture, and it just, like, wasn't like, I felt like there was no morals and ethics in finance, but there is a huge place for morals and ethics in finance. And yeah, it's kind of the whole industry was in a state of flux. And so with that like framework, I kept investing. I like kept doing my own investing while going to school. Eventually started blogging for Seeking Alpha. Through that, got hooked up with a private investor who I helped him manage his money and do investment research for him on small cap technology companies for a couple years throughout college, after college, and then finally was like, all right, I'm kind of done just sharing my ideas with one person. I want to like put them out into the world. And so just basically started recording videos of me explaining what investments I was looking at, and all sorts of disruptive technology companies gravitating more and more towards electric vehicles. Like I've been following Tesla for like probably 10 years at this point and was investing in them since 2012. And so that was, way back when. And then sort of grew organically. And then about 2 years ago, I had enough of like a presence online to just sort of want to give it a shot and went all in. And now that's my full-time job, is creating content and investing.
What a wild and crazy world it is, right? That you can be a content creator on YouTube and make a living off of it. I mean, you're probably not rolling in the dough, but you're doing something that you love every single day.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, but it's like I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like I have ultimate freedom. And then I took 2 years, I would say, or maybe like a year and a half of like basically making no money and committing to just go through my savings and investments to basically build up the audience and revenue streams. But now I finally gotten to the point where like I can pay my bills and, like you said, I'm not rolling in money, but like it's actually sustainable and I can do it and it's a real job and it pays for everything. So I feel so lucky.
Yeah, well, the content creation piece in terms of EVs is not my full time job, but I'm extremely grateful for the flexibility to be able to work for myself and make my own decisions and do really random and crazy things like decide last minute to drive out to Los Angeles because my flight for the Model Y event was canceled. So if I worked for someone, I'd have to I definitely wouldn't have been able to do that, right? So 9 p.m. at night, I probably would have had to ask someone for permission to be able to leave. I'm going to ask my wife, but that's a different relationship than a boss.
No, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, that's really the unique time we live in, and why I feel also so blessed is because like the media, like having a direct way for me to communicate with everyone, like via the internet, whether it's Twitter or YouTube, is super. Like I just don't take that for granted at all because I think we're in a really unique moment in history, and especially when like we're trying to fight through the Tesla FUD or there's all this news coming at you, like like there's egos in journalism. This network doesn't want to have me on anymore because I'm not saying bad things about Tesla and like this. So it's just I feel real fortunate to have that sort of direct connection.
Yeah, it is. It is a direct feedback loop from the real people who care about this sort of news and content, and you have control over it. I think that's the other thing you just alluded to. You have control over what message you communicate, and you're not being filtered by some other larger media label or brand that has most likely an agenda to push a particular type of message or get clicks or views on their video.
Totally. And yeah, and we're such part of such a cool community. Like the whole Tesla YouTube community is really grown in from just the past year or two. So it's been cool to be a part of it. And I think
I
we're doing a lot of great, amazing research. Like first and foremost, I'm a Tesla investor and fan. And so that's how I got into this space is I was watching Teslanomics. I was watching the financial education channel before I had mine. And so that sort of inspired me to get started. And like these are the people that I've learned from. So yeah,
as a content creator, I'm just really curious to dive into this for a moment, and then we can transition to some other themes. But as a content creator on YouTube, at what point did you really start to see things get some traction in terms of putting stuff out there into the world and people really grabbing onto it?
yeah, I mean, the first layer of it was just super slow and steady. Like I had maybe like 1,000 or 1,500 people on Seeking Alpha that followed me. And so then I started like pushing my videos through that. And maybe we get a couple hundred views on my first videos. But then it was like, okay, now videos are getting 300 views. Now the good ones are getting 500 views. Now 700 views. And so you just kind of like, I'm adding one subscriber a day now. Now I'm adding two subscribers a day. Like it's just a grind. But then we had this series called Moonshot Monday where we predict crazy tech acquisitions and sort of big moves in the tech industry. And we made a whole episode about why Amazon should buy Whole Foods 3 months before it happened. And when that did actually happen, Reddit reposted it, and that got us a ton of traction. So then in one day, I went from 700 subscribers to 3,000. So there's like, I've had two moments in my channel. Like there was that, and then the whole let's go to YouTube moment with Elon cutting off the conference call. And that was another moment where I like doubled in one day. But other than that, it's just like really just like this like engine chugging along. That's like steadily building.
That yeah, let's talk about the let's go to YouTube thing because there may be some people who are listening to this podcast who don't follow Tesla as closely. So this was an earnings call last year, right? Was it Q2 earnings call?
Q1. Yeah.
Okay, and the tide was sort of building, right, for this climate of um, taking retail shareholder questions. You were crowdsourcing stuff on Twitter and YouTube, and you had a list of questions from people. Excuse me. You had a list of questions from people who were really curious to get their questions on the earnings call. So, why don't you take it from there and sort of what happened from that point once you got everyone's questions and you were obviously corresponding with Tesla, got a tentative maybe that you could be on the call and ask some of these questions. So what happened from there?
Yeah. So aggregated all these questions from retail shareholders. And finally, Elon Musk tweeted that, okay, I could be on the call. And then so yeah, I was just basically sitting there prepared, like having no idea if I would actually get called on the call. I was literally like at my desk tuning into the call because it's all going down live. And then there was like I'm literally listening and he's like getting pissed off at the analyst. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound good. Like what's happening? Like this is a boneheaded question. And it's just kind of like the tension was very high. And then they're like, he says, let's go to YouTube. And I'm like, crap, is that me? Like, and then and then they said Hyperchange TV and like that's me. And then I just basically was panicking, but luckily like had a Google Doc of all the top questions, very like written out specifically. And then just sort of basically went through those and went from there.
um, what's the sort of behind the scenes background look like for these phone calls? So you get a special call in number, and there's probably what, how many, 30, 50 analysts on the call waiting to ask questions.
Yeah. And so what it is every quarter, so companies release their financial report, right? So this is like a huge moment of disclosure every 3 months for a business. And so traditionally they have this call afterwards where analysts from the banks can ask questions about those financials that were just reported. And that's like this whole earnings call format. But I feel like it had just been getting so stale, and like it had it been disrupted for so long, and who's on the call isn't who's asking the best questions. It's just like who works for the right bank, who's friends with the right person. So like the calls are super closed. You have to be friends with good with the IR person. They have to pick you. It's just pretty much like it's not really democratized in any way. And that's what I was trying to bring to the earnings call, was democratize the process. And slowly working with Tesla, they've been opening it up more and more. And like we had you and I submitted questions. We did the whole partnership with Say to allow retail questions on the call. And that's just more like a structured version of what I did, just manually aggregating questions. And so it's been really cool to watch this evolution. And I will say, like, between I'm an advisor to Say, full disclosure, but like working with Say to try and get this to other companies, I will say is difficult, and they don't see the value, and they aren't ready to disrupt, and don't care as much about their smaller shareholders as Tesla does. So it's been kind of like refreshing to see Tesla really lead on that.
Yeah, I was actually really shocked that storyline did not get more press and exposure. The fact that a publicly traded company was taking questions, was crowdsourcing questions on an online platform that probably no one knew about, and Elon Musk was actually fielding those questions on the phone call
Like
with
leading the call with those questions too, ahead of every analyst, which
yeah.
is that's almost unprecedented. And to your point, like, why does no one care? Like, everyone cares the first time he says something about a boneheaded questioner, because they can make a huge negative article about it. But that same moment also like created this new disruption in how earnings calls will work forever, maybe, and change the industry. Yet no one actually cares about that industry disruption. They only care about like the oops moment from it.
Yeah,
But that's
yeah,
just how media works.
it's the headline grabber and the clicks and the views that unfortunately drive a lot of this stuff instead of quality content. And Tesla's definitely a polarizing company. So in some ways, I get it. I get why people are doing that, because it's a new company. People are curious about it. It reminds me of like the paparazzi and a celebrity, right? Every single move is analyzed. Every single small or big thing is headline news, and people just want to use that to gain the advertisers and clicks and ad money.
Totally.
So okay, so that was Q3 2018 that you got on the call and asked the questions. There was a whole
Q1,
nother.
but yeah.
What was it?
Q1 2018.
Uh,
Or
uh,
Q3 is when we did, yeah, I
yeah,
wasn't on the Q3 call.
yeah. You were on the Q3 call. Um, Elon took your questions. So there was an entire quarter after that where you were probably working with Say to develop this platform, because I want to dive into the platform piece of this, because I think it's a really big deal, and then sort
Mhm,
of segue into what happened for the Q4 2018 phone call as well. So you're working with Say on this platform. All of
mhm.
a sudden, it's ready for prime time. What is the benefit of Say? How does it help the small retail shareholder um, address concerns or questions or interest in Tesla?
Yeah, so, I mean, Say's whole mission is to give small investors a say, like, literally, and that's why I partner with them, because it's so close to my mission, which is like democratizing finance, giving the little guy a shot and a voice, and that's what Say's doing. So they've like democratized the earnings call process, is the simplest way I can put it. Where instead of it just being who to get on that call, it's and just the bankers that are most friends with the company. Like, let's put it to a vote and have everybody submit questions, and then people can vote on questions, and based on how many shares they have, that's how many votes they get. And that way Tesla has this amazing, like, I think it's an amazing product for Tesla that they should be honestly paying for, because they're getting all of this amazing crowdsourced feedback that's like the most important things are upvoted right to the top. So it's this democratization of interaction. And what does that mean? Is that means that little shareholders like myself, I only owned 66 shares at the time, but I got over 30,000 worth of shares to upvote my question. So that's, I think, tens of millions of dollars. And yours was the most voted question, also 10 millions of dollars. So even though we're a little investor, we don't have 10 millions of dollars. Like, that's how loud our voice was, because a bunch of the other little investors came together with us. And so I, to me, that's just incredible. And like, I think it always should be like that. And it's pushing transparency and democratization of a process that really needs those things.
I agree. So this is sort of like a Reddit style platform where um, you verify that you're a shareholder, and it goes through this verification process when you set up your account on Say. And once it's verified, then you have 3 questions each quarter that you can post on this platform. And other verified shareholders can upvote those questions. And there's a few ways to sort them out by number of shares and by what's the other one? By total number of dollars, right?
Yeah, I think it's like how many votes, how many people have voted for you, and then how many shares.
Yes. Yeah. And it was actually for the first time that this was live for Tesla's earnings call. It's actually really impressive to see how many questions came in. And what I really like about the platform, when you showed me the platform, I instantly knew that it was going to be an effective way to communicate to Tesla. Um, it truly does allow Tesla to know what the pulse of the retail shareholder market is. What are people thinking about? What's most important to them? What are they concerned about? All of these things bubble up to the very top because they're upvoted by the community.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so Q4 2018 earnings call. Tesla agrees to take questions from this. They've obviously seen these questions in advance, and somehow decided. I think they went from top to bottom, right? They went from
Yeah, but they skip your question.
yeah, directly. Which we had a conversation about this offline. Initially, I thought it was intentional, and it could have been to try and it had the tone of the question was about customer service and how owners were getting really frustrated with the lack of quality. And so it was definitely a different tone of question in comparison to every other question, which was like production numbers, gross margin. It was when are we going to see a refresh of Model S and X? Are they going to use 2170 cells? All those sort of things. And here my question is, which is literally the most upvoted question, talking about the frustrations that owners are seeing, and how that is directly tied to revenue and sales. Because that's not just the background behind that question was not just me and my experience. That's the Denver Tesla Club owners and their experience here locally. That's taking questions and fielding questions from people on Twitter, venting their frustrations publicly. Me reaching out to them saying, "Hey, just send me a direct message, a private message, and I'll see what I can do to help you out." And then some people proactively reaching out to me just because they are familiar with my name, asking for help. So you have this sort of collective message growing that people are frustrated with the lack of response, the quality of a brand new 50 to $150,000 car that they're taking delivery of, that has paint flaws, scratches, chips, and so on. That was like Q3. I really saw that sort of hit fever pitch. I think it has gotten better because I haven't seen as many of those issues, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, that's sort of the background behind it. And Elon did address that for several minutes in the opening remarks, which looking back, I think is okay for me. As long as they address it, that's really all that matters.
Yeah, and I think they definitely tried to, or like acknowledged it. So.
And I think it's been getting better. I can say as an owner, um, the addition inside of the mobile app to be able to schedule stuff removes that potential that someone's not going to get a response. Pick up the
Awesome.
phone, call on hold for 20, 30 minutes. Uh, I think that's almost instantly gone away, completely gone
Awesome.
away.
And so
And
what and explain that to me because I don't actually have a Tesla. So now there's a part in the app where you can just tap to get service instantly?
yeah, that's correct. So, you've got, when you open up the app, you've got options to control climate control. You can lock and unlock the car. You can check on the charging or state of charge, your location, and then at the very bottom, I'm not going to show you because it shows my address on the app, but at the very bottom it says schedule service. And then when you tap on that, it gives you a list of different types of service that you can pick from. For example, key fob, key card, firmware update, alert appeared, heating and air conditioning, maintenance, glass replacement, and so on. And then you select the date and the location of the service center. And then
Hmm.
and then I'm assuming Tesla gets that. You're in for that date and time. And then you just show up and they've already got a record of it. And if they need to call and get additional clarification, they can. And sometimes they will proactively reach out and say, hey, your need qualifies for mobile service, and then they'll send the mobile technician out to wherever you want or need the technician to go out to.
Hmm.
So I think they've been making some headway there.
Yeah, that's really promising.
I'm very hopeful, and then the quality seems to have gotten better. I'm not hearing as many frustrations about paint quality. I'm seeing a few, but nowhere near as many as what we saw at the end of Q3 2018.
Mhm. It feels like they're not rushing as much.
Yeah, and that might. I mean, the fact that they're delivering in Europe may, and the fact that the cars have been on ships may be muffling some of that frustration. But I haven't really seen any. I mean, I've been seeing like positive remarks from European and Chinese new owners. So I haven't been really seeing any crazy stuff like I mean it really seemed like the hinges were falling off of the company at the end of Q3 2018 because there's just a lot of frustrations, and I think Tesla, quite frankly, was trying to survive and just get cars out the door and into owners' hands.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Okay, so what's been your interaction with Tesla Q? I know you've had some direct debates with uh, uh, the head of Tesla Q, the unofficial head of Tesla Q, Mark Spiegel. I see you also get some razzing from some of the other Tesla Q minions. But what's been your
Constant razzing.
interactions? What's that?
Constant razzing.
Yeah, right, yeah. So what's been your interaction with them, and what's just your overall opinion about this underground Twitter Twitter movement from Tesla Q?
Yeah, it's such a weird phenomena. It's like I don't know what to think of it, honestly. Mark Spiegel's an interesting character. Like he's a hedge fund manager who's been managing a fund for 7 years that's like chronically underperformed the market. So like what that means is he's losing you more money than if you didn't pay someone and just invested with the stock market and like significantly more money. So the fact that like media outlets even take him seriously is to me like telling of the entire ecosystem. It's like this guy has been wrong for years and years and years, and yet you're writing a whole article about when he says Tesla's going to go bankrupt or whatever, which he's been saying for 5 years and just been 100% incorrect. And it's like if you go to the statements I went in my podcast against him, it's like there's all these bets. Like I bet him they would sell 12,000 Model 3s per month through the end of the year, and like they easily crushed that hurdle. But like, is he mentioning that bet? Is he mentioning he's wrong? Like, is he changed his tune? Like, he's totally changed his thesis. Like, so I don't. I honestly just kind of stopped caring about it because I just feel like Tesla Q people are very angry in their own weird way, and like I'm in this for fun and positivity and building an exciting future, and like that's what I think Tesla's doing. And every single tweet I send out, I get comments that are like personal insults about me and my psychology, or like you're going to be a case study in delusion in business, or like like you think you're teaching people to how to invest, like that's a crime,
Yeah.
and I think I make less money to be able to help teach people. So to me that's like, you know I don't know. So I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion other than I try not to listen to them, and I think like they're in it for the wrong reasons, and they're like frankly just like mean, angry people that I don't want to associate with.
Yeah, they remind me of flat earthers.
Yeah, honestly, honestly, that's a great comparison.
It's a similar type of person that and what is there's another movement that's tied to Trump that believes that there's some sort of conspiracy going on with Trump that the governments are trying to kick Trump out because Trump's a light and a voice in a dark world, and everyone is up to get him, to find him, guilty of something that's not true. It reminds me a lot of that, and the thing about every once when I've got some free time, I try and just listen. Like just listen to what they're saying and try and make sense of it and why they feel so strongly about that. I mean, the whole thesis of Tesla Q is that it's a Tesla and Elon Musk are intentionally um, misleading shareholders, and doing fraudulent things.
Yeah,
And
that's the crux of it that I think is just it's like Cienter, that whole crux of the argument. What is his intent? Is it deception the intent? No. That's where it's wrong. But if you look through the lens of everything Tesla does is they're trying to deceive you, then of course you can convince yourself that every piece of news is negative. So there, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's
no, no,
it. And I just
I'm
think
glad you added
everyone,
your thought. Yeah, you know, so you have to believe it in order for you to buy into the Tesla Q motive and theory. You have to believe that Tesla and Elon Musk are inherently evil and intentionally misleading people, because that's their whole thesis. For
yeah,
example, the what do they call it? The Shorty Air Force. So Tesla is storing these vehicles in these lots and parking garages and on ships, because there's no demand. And so they're making these vehicles, and they need to show that there's production numbers, but but there's no sales, which is clearly incorrect, right? They're selling more and more vehicles, particularly Model 3s, every single month.
yeah, yeah, it's absurd to me. And it's like I just think it's so easy to be an armchair critic. That's what I come back to. Like even my friends who just are from the side, like, isn't Elon Musk crazy? Like, isn't Tesla like going through trouble? It's like it's so easy to just say that and not have like I just have tremendous as an entrepreneur myself, like to actually go do something new and try and that's really hard is like to me very noble, especially with Tesla's mission. So like I just think people don't give it the benefit of the doubt. And like to the point of the Shorty Air Force, it's like, dude, okay, so we have a company that's went from building like 100,000 cars a year. It's trying to scale to 500,000 cars a year because people are obsessed with the product. They've been waiting years. They're dealing hundreds of thousands, almost 100,000 cars a quarter now. And you're going to tell me that because there's like 3,000 cars in parking lots around the country, this means they can't sell? Like, if you were a car startup trying to reinvent the entire delivery logistics network direct to consumer model, and you were growing this fast, you had 90,000 cars to deliver in a quarter, and everyone was trying to make like only having a couple thousand in lots here and there, like you're not thinking through what the problem is. It's like, yeah, we got to ship cars here. That means we're gonna have to store them somewhere here because we're building 3 times as many cars as we were a year ago. So now all of our like capacity for storage and inventory is full. So we need to like use overflow lots to expand. Like this is just a symptom of a company that's growing so quickly. Like, and it just, when you actually like follow the breadcrumbs to like, okay, so where's this leading? So they have like a couple thousand cars in parking lots. Like, aren't they still going to sell those? Couldn't they just sell them for a slight discount if they did get damaged? Like I don't think that would bankrupt Tesla. Like you just start following it back and you're like, what is the point of all this? But it's easy to make a headline and tweet a picture. So
Yeah, it's the whole problem with conspiracy theorists. They're continually twisting reality to
yeah,
fit their agenda. And in this case, which I think is extremely concerning and really sad, these people are financially motivated to twist the truth, right?
yeah,
If the
that's a good
stock
point.
falls, they monetarily benefit from that. And to me, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, and it's like I'm kind of torn by that too because it's this weird thing of like you want balance in the markets, so betting on both sides is an important part of markets, but uh the incentive for short sellers is definitely there, you know? And I think a lot of these people like Mark Spiegel and David Einhorn and like the people that are short, like look at their performance of their funds. Like they keep it's so ironic that their biggest complaint is Tesla's running out of time when to me that's psychology 101 projection when they're actually the ones who are running out of time because they're showing quarterly performance to their investors. That's why they're so worried about what happens every quarter. Like they're the ones whose fund is underperforming for the past 3 years. They're the ones whose investors are pulling their capital. They're the ones who's about to go bankrupt. You know what I mean? So that's actually the reality. And they're just like, yeah. So
Yeah, here's the positive side of that. I think companies like Tesla in particular, but every company needs people to keep them accountable. And I think that's where the value of shorting a stock comes in, right? Because it allows their space for people to ask questions and to criticize. And Tesla definitely needs that because it keeps them honest and it keeps them accountable. And they're, like we've had many discussions about concerns, and this is actually a good segue into where Tesla can improve and do better, where their opportunities to improve are. um, there are definitely ways that Tesla can do better. And so where, like, when I make that statement, Tesla can do better, what are some of the things in your opinion that come to mind? Where would you
yeah.
like to see Tesla sort of tweak things to notch it up to the next level of growth?
Yeah, and I think first of all, I think they're doing a lot of things right, like or and they're crushing it in a lot of ways, like with the efficiency of their battery, their whole technology, the product. But I think there's like some communications thing that I just think are really easy to clean up where I'm like, this is an easy improvement. Like when you release a product, like think it through, stick to a price. Like I'm a one-man team. I don't know if this is a good comparison, but like when I think about I'm launching my newsletter on Patreon, like I think about the price I'm charging. I'm committing to that price. I'm making clear communication about why I'm pricing this that way. And like, I'm not going to change it because it's going to piss people off. Like, I know that. And I'm just, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to sell a $50,000 car, like, I'm going to think about the price and stick. I just think there's like this level of like last minute sudden decisions and like constant changes and constant going back on your word that are just like really sloppy. And I don't, I think it's a very minor problem in the grand scheme of things, or I don't think it's a big issue like that's going to kill the company. I don't know, maybe you think differently, but like that just to me seems like a really easy area of improvement. And I don't get why it's so hard. Like
Where
the
do you think that
constant price changes.
disorganization comes from? Where is that disorganization or lack of effective communication coming from?
Uh, that's the top is what I would think. And there's like a lack of like C-suite. There's lack of people who have autonomy in the C-suite to make decisions that are not Elon, and he's stretched too thin and uninformed, and so he makes rash decisions. No one says no, and then they realize that that rash decision wasn't the right move, like closing all the stores. So then they have to walk it back, and then it's just like there's a massive fallout from that decision.
Yeah, especially lately, the last month, yeah, month and a week. There've been a lot of back and forth, a lot of up and downs. Price going down and then price going up,
Like
and
Model Y, like we're releasing the price, but now it's about to go up. It's like what?
hmm hmm yeah. To me, that's a lot of the changes that they've done recently. For example, saying that they're going to close down the stores, decreasing and then increasing pricing, saying and doing that, laying off employees, and then backtracking that and saying we're not going to lay off as many employees tied to retail stores. uh, to me, this communicates that they're trying to find ways to make the balance sheet work, and especially when in Q1 2019, and we'll find out here hopefully this week about how the numbers turned out. A slower, maybe slower than expected. I have a hard time believing that it caught them by surprise, but a slower than expected sales numbers for their vehicles. And so then it's like, okay, we're end of quarter. We got to figure out how to juice the revenue and make the company work for Q1 2019.
Yeah, and that's kind of the root of the problem to me. It's like, why are we juicing revenue for end of the quarter to please Wall Street? So now we're deciding on how to run the company because Wall Street wants us to show a profit. and that is what is dictating all of our other decisions, like, that's a horrible mentality that's just gonna run you into trouble. That's what I think has been happening. So, I don't know what's gonna change, but
I you know, I listened to and we'll give you a chance to shout this out at the end here, but I listened to your podcast, your first podcast that you did this week, and you and what was the gentleman's name that you
Matt Joyce.
Matt Joyce, yeah, thank you. So, you two talked about your opinions of whether they should raise capital or, take on debt. I personally would like for them to not take on debt in particular. Um, I think it's good for the company to be healthy and nimble. Um, you know, what are your opinions about this? I think you've talked about this a couple of times recently. Where do you think the company should head in order to move forward?
I mean, the problem is I'm not over the wall. By over the wall, like, I don't know what's happening with the financials, so, like, it's hard for me to know, like, I don't know how desperate they are, but I think if they're desperate for cash, then they should raise a billion or two in a tiny secondary offering immediately. And that's what I've been saying for a long time. But if they're not desperate for cash, then I honestly think this is going to be the crappiest quarter. Like, okay, we had the huge, vacuum of demand because of the tax credit. We're starting shipping internationally, so there's a lag. So I think this is sort of like a vacuum quarter where, I mean, the last two quarters Tesla's been significantly profitable. So even if they take it a step down and they're like break even, a small loss, like, that's still pretty good. And we still have a couple billion in the bank. We just paid our biggest debt. So I think, and then if you assume from there that they actually start, continuing that positive cash flow and profit, I think Tesla might be in the clear. And that's sort of why I've been personally getting super bullish and buying as much stock as I can just these past couple days and week, because that's where it hit me, like talking all the shorts and the bears. Like, it's like, all right, so even in the short seller's worst case scenario of what's going to happen, like, Tesla's still going to have a billion in the bank and things are going to be getting better. So I'm like, that's the worst case scenario. You know, I can't crunch the numbers to make it look much worse than that.
I would agree with you. I think that the long-term future potential of the company looks extremely great. And in reality, as long as they're not running out of money completely, I'm okay with them taking an L for a single quarter, especially knowing what is in store. Right? It was a little bit of a surprise that the 35K Model 3 that they announced that this quarter. I think we were all sort of expecting that the current quarter Q2 of 2019, but they announced it Q1, I think, to try and generate interest and buzz and sales, and it seems like that worked. But
And they like didn't even deliver them, which was weird because then they had the standard range plus, and it seemed like they only delivered that one.
my theory on that, and I'm curious to get your response after this, but my theory on that is they realized they had a ton of standard plus, and of course, why would you not prioritize the better margin cars before the smaller margin cars? I think that's smart, especially knowing the financial potentially financial strain that they were in for Q1. I would totally deliver the cars that give the best profit margin for the company,
Mhm.
and then just punt the standard range for right now this week, and deliver those.
Yeah, it just seems like Tesla's like, I just don't like that mentality of like, ever since they had everyone camp out for the Model 3, but then it like didn't actually matter whether you'd camped out. It was based on geography and what you ordered when you got it. Like, I don't know. I just think that's the same mentality that they're doing here. It's like, oh, 35,000 available. Wait, we actually got orders for more expensive ones. So screw you, $35,000 people. It's just like, if you're gonna, I don't know. It's just too much of a focus on profit.
It's the epitome of a snake oil salesman, right? You say one
Yeah.
thing, but you do another, and you're like, "Oh, actually, we found a way to get you a better deal if you buy these additional two things." Uh,
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
like now Tesla Q is sounding right when they're like, Tesla's doing a bait and switch. And like, someone just sent me that article where like Tesla dealers are trying to upsell everybody at the end of quarter. And I'm like, yep, I believe it. Like, that's all I had to tell my friend. I was like, that's probably what they're doing. Like, it sounds exactly like Tesla.
yeah, and like, I mean, I don't. necessarily have a problem with incentivizing people. Just stay true to your word. It's bad when a company uh, uh, drops the price and then says prices will go up on April 2nd. Uh, you know, uh, 12:01 a.m. on April 2nd. So get in your orders, and it's like they're doing these things. It's just communicates just an immaturity, and they're doing these things to sort of spur on sales, which is okay, but they're using that too much as a demand lever, which is creating a um a lack of trust and reputation. I think the reputation is they're ruining the reputation of having trust with consumers.
Yeah, totally.
Um, so what's the outlook of Tesla look like here? 2019. Do you think they managed to pull it off? You've got now 35K Model 3, which you know uh, gross margins probably aren't fantastic, at least here initially, and will continue to get better. You've got you've got a pickup truck that they'll show sometime later this year. You've got a Model Y. You've got the self-driving computer. So when you consider everything, what's the outlook of Tesla look like?
I think the outlook is super, super strong, but I'm trying to figure out like how I'm wrong because something, um, you know, I don't know. I guess I got more questions than answers. I mean, we're recording this. Q1 deliveries could be out at any moment. Q1 financials are going to come out. I just think there's so much we don't know. Like I was just watching your video before this, the 75 or what about the SNX battery refresh? So it's like we since January they dropped the cheapest Model S and X. Like that seemed weird to me. Where are we going to update that and refresh it? Does that mean we have to build new production lines? Like, where are we going to build the Model Y? We're still not really sure. The Semi was supposed to be 2019, but we still don't know we're building that. Okay, if Model 3 production was 90,000, or we could build 90,000 cars this quarter and we're not demand constrained, then why aren't production ramping to 100,000? Like, where are we building out a new Model 3 production line? Like, I don't know. I'm just like confused as to what is actually happening. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm like how desperate they are versus how strategic they are. Like I've just been totally up in the air, but I think they're going to get through it and it's going to be fine. Like I just try and not overthink what happens every quarter too much. And like I think they've been through some way worse challenges and try to put it in perspective of like, okay, so every other year it was like a miracle if Tesla made a profit and it was never going to last. Now it's like one quarter Tesla's not going to make money and we're all freaking out. So the stock hasn't moved, but the entire perception of the company's changed going from, oh, we're not making a profit now to um yeah. So I think there's like, on one hand, they're more profitable and leaner and in a better financial position than ever. So I that's what I keep coming back to.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that this last quarter that just ended, Q1 2019, is a microcosm of the big picture. They've had
Mhm.
the previous two quarters have been extremely great. You're now seeing some news in Europe and China where people are receiving the Model 3 with open, like they're super pumped. And Europe and China, I think for the most part, prefer smaller cars. So the Model 3 is was built for markets outside of North America, in my opinion, because of its size. So we have just barely tapped the potential of worldwide interest and demand for the Model 3. You look at the statistics for Norway that just came out, and the Model 3 dominated. Like I think it was nearly 50% of the electric vehicle sales in Norway for the month of March were Model 3s.
Yeah.
So you're
Epic.
seeing, yeah, it truly is. I mean, it really is. That is sort of a microcosm of what I think Tesla will be able to do with the Model 3 in particular globally. And they haven't even introduced it to other markets, right-hand drive markets. That's untapped. And then you have the sort of you have the sort of like critical mass that starts to build for the car. Other people who were sort of on the fence about buying a Tesla see other people excited, and then that generates more buzz. So I think it's important for people to understand that this is Q1 2019 is a microcosm of the entire. It's a small blip on the radar in comparison to the potential that Tesla has here. So if they can make it through this quarter, I'm optimistic about the company.
And so that's where I'm confused though, is like I'm in this exact same boat. On one hand, super optimistic, but I'm like, okay, so if we're all starting deliveries to all these new regions and demand is off the charts, then why does it sound like production and deliveries are going to decrease? You know what I mean? Like it, so it's something that just to me, like that's why I'm just waiting to see the numbers because I just like it doesn't add up to me. It's like on one hand, like you're right, like shouldn't there be a huge backlog? Like, didn't we still have 200,000 orders on the books for US? Like, aren't we crushing and ramping production? Like, so why is there going to be a, why are we going to be way less profitable all of a sudden? Why is deliveries going to potentially sequentially decline if demand's off the charts? That one thing I worry about is like the sort of demand vacuum. It's not just like, oh, it's a sedan. People want a smaller car. Like, I think that's one thing, but I think Tesla's redefining all the boxes of the auto industry. Like, it's electric. It's a totally new way to drive. And I think looking at I try not to look too much at the market share numbers because I'm worried that like there was a big early adopter wave, and now that Tesla's hitting more of this mainstream, like it's just harder to sell cars. Consumers are more finicky, they're less forgiving, and just switching to an EV is different. And so I don't know if they'll be able to, immediately and permanently take 25% market share of every segment. And then if they can't, it's like, all right, well, where's that sweet spot? How long does EV adoption take? Because there's no question that Tesla's leading, but it's like, that's why I don't think their competition's any EV. It's just ICE cars.
Yeah, here's what makes me really hopeful. And this is very well documented online, but as an owner myself, anytime you get into these cars, people absolutely love them. So this
Yeah.
is not an issue of people liking and loving the product. When people get the product, they love it. They become fans and sometimes super fans of it. I mean, it resembles a lot of the like early 2000s, that decade of the 2000s where Apple had raving fans, and they're still there to some extent. But I think that decade where they came out with the iPod and it was just hit after hit after hit, and then they came out with the iPhone. It was like you could not keep people away from those products, even though they were selling them at a premium. To me, it
Mhm.
reminds me a lot of how people are interacting with Tesla. People love the cars. There's a very small percentage of people that get them and don't love them. And so, to me, that's very hopeful. I mean, that really is probably the baseline. Do people love your product? Because if people love your product, they are willing to pay a premium for it, and then you create this critical mass of buzz and excitement about it. I think it's following a very similar trajectory to the iPhone. You know.
Yeah, and that's what yeah, and that's my kind of my bull case is like the product is incredible. So we can talk about all this other stuff, but that's really what matters at the end of the day. And there's so many parallels at the Model Y event. Like Matt Joyce, the guy who I had on my podcast, I met there. Like these are people who were early investors in Apple, did incredibly well in that story, and see the similarities. Like it's not even like a parallel story. It's like the same people are backing Tesla that once did saw the disruption that Apple is bringing in. So
Here's why I think people are bearish on Tesla. I mean, there's probably many reasons that people could come up with, but the fundamental reason, after really diving deep in 2019 into innovators, like I've been reading through Henry Ford, Thomas Edison. I'm reading a book right now about the innovators that drove the storyline of computers, the first computers, the people who created the first computers and had those initial ideas. Um, I think Tesla. I think people are bearish on Tesla because they're doing something different. And anytime you do something different, people want to hate it. It's different. It's the same psychology for any sort of belief, religion, sexual orientation. It's when it's different, people want to hate on it, and that I think is the baseline of why people are bearish on Tesla. Because if as we talked about, if you look outside of the fact that it's different, they have a different sales model. They're selling electric versus gasoline. These cars don't need as much maintenance, little to no maintenance on the car. When you look outside of that, people love the car. And again, to me, that's really all that matters is, do you have are you delighting the customer, and are they excited about it? Because if they're excited about the product that they bought, they're going to tell other people, and they're going to be lifelong customers.
And yeah, and I love that because it's like that the customer brand excitement of Tesla is like a proxy for like financial statements are in the rear view mirror. Like to me, people liking and following Tesla on YouTube and Twitter is a future, showing the future potential of the brand, how much excitement. You have all these young people that want to like put their capital in Tesla, buy Teslas. And so um and my other train of thought actually sort of not making much sense here. But the one thing I keep coming back to is from a super long term perspective. Like as someone who's been following this story for a decade, it's like the argument used to be when I was in business school and like investing in Tesla. They're a $3 billion company. They're trying to go the Model S from 2,000 units to 20,000 units from 2012 to 2013. Like that, it was like, okay, we cannot. You would have to take 25% market share in the luxury sedan market. No company's ever done that. And you're an electric car. Those are toys for rich people. No one's going to buy electric cars. You can't hit that market share. Like the problem with Teslas, you put it in a box. And once the second you're trying to put it in a box of this luxury OEM, that luxury OEM, like you start putting all these limits on it that aren't real. And so that's why I think when you follow it as an investor, like the customer loves it, that's can go anywhere. And so I think it's hard. Tesla is the Apple of the auto world, but it's not going to look like Apple. It's going to look like its own thing and be different. And so to me, watching this inflection point go from there will never be EVs, they can never take this market share, towards every single other OEM has flipped their entire business around. Let's invest in EVs and desperately copy Tesla as fast as possible. And even Amazon and companies and Tencent, who's backing Neo, even tech companies who aren't even Google with Waymo, who aren't even auto OEMs, are trying to now copy and follow in Tesla's footsteps because that's how big the opportunity is. Like that's the way I take a step back. I'm like, I'm winning. Like you told me that Audi, Mercedes, and everyone was going to try and copy Tesla's business model 5 years ago. That's a best case scenario. That's everything going exactly to plan because they finally realized they're so desperate they're going to die if they don't copy them, and that's just long term the phase that we're in.
Yeah, I want to kind of jam on the EV competition, because we've talked about this before, and I've been marinating on this for a little while. Um, do the competition have any sort of leg up on Tesla? Is there a way to beat Tesla in terms of the product that traditional and new EV automakers are offering and saying they're going to offer?
I don't think any EV is close. And like what I had Matt Joyce on my podcast, what he is really dive deep into is the efficiency of Tesla's entire package and basically the amount of energy needed to propel, the vehicle on a weight adjusted basis. And that is basically summing up and boiling down the efficiency of Tesla's battery and drivetrain technology, which is just significantly ahead and innovating faster than any other car company. So I would encourage people to look at this chart. It's like a chart where he literally sums it up with the table with every other EV, and they can't compete. And so there's a ton of reasons why they might not be able to do that. Is it the battery management software? Is it because they're not vertically integrated? Is it because Tesla has their own cell chemistry? Like I think it's all of these things adding up, the aerodynamics of the vehicle, all of these little things add up. But when you add up all these little advantages, like the technology advantages through off the charts, that's just one layer. The other layer is the cost layer. That move that everyone thought they were crazy to do the Gigafactory. And, it was insane. That was Tesla Q's whole thing. That's going to be the death of Tesla, is this huge factory. Now that's actually been like the biggest like underlying backbone and foundational pillar of their moat, which is this, core competency and economies of scale at assembling batteries. That's what they're going to be able to acquire Maxwell and have a positive ROI. So there's so many, I just don't think, yeah, you got the chart right there.
Yep.
So I think it's just going to be so hard until another OEM. This is why I think Rivian might be the best competition. Like you got to start from scratch with an EV architecture, with a team of unbelievable software engineers. Like I just don't see any car company getting close or doing that.
Yeah, and for those that are listening to the audio version of this, how Matt organized this was an efficiency ratio, kilowatt hours over range over weight. And he says that the watt hours per mile is not as accurate of a way to measure efficiency of these EVs. Rather, this efficiency ratio is better. And so when you look at this list of what maybe 20 20 to 25 EVs, in model Teslas and Mercedes, Hyundai, Volvo, Chevy Bolt, Porsche Taycan, Hyundai Ioniq, Audi e-tron, Rivian, R1T, Jaguar I-Pace. The first half of the list is all Tesla. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. And what's even crazier is on a different way to look at it is like the specific energy density of the batteries. According to Matt's research, the 1865 cell was 206 watt hours per kilogram, and the 2170 cell that's in the Model 3 is 260 watt hours per kilogram, a 26% increase. And that's just in a handful of years. So not only is Tesla ahead, but they've already shown that they're continuing to progress at a rapid pace. And like you said in your video, that 2170 technology isn't even in the S or X. So those efficiency ratios are very understated based on what Tesla's technology could do. And so, I add up, A, they have a lead, B, they're like running faster than everybody else, expanding that lead. And so, that's the core of my bull thesis is like, until that changes, nothing else matters.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this video idea a few times publicly, but it's in line with it's basically the same thing as Matt's chart that I've been thinking about, and it is this holy grail of electric vehicles, and it comes down to two things: the range, which efficiency could also be coupled into that, and charging network. Those are the two things that if you can figure out, you will be competitive with Tesla. And at the moment, no, zero automakers besides Rivian have maybe Rivian. It looks like the efficiency of the vehicle is not that great when you look at the match chart, but um, no one is competing. And I've done some exposés on. I just looked into Porsche Taycan's range. They've been communicating a 311-mile range or 500-kilometer range. But an article that I read the other day when researching my last podcast episode, they said that 311-mile range is based on the NEDC estimates, which is like two generations behind Europe's new measurements, the WLTP. And WLTP estimates are even further are not as conservative and accurate as the EPA range. So basically what that means is that 311-mile range for the Porsche Taycan, which I believe is going to be their top end range, will actually end up being more like a 240 to 250 mile range. So that's a pretty big deal. The same thing happened with Jaguar, also communicated the NEDC range when they were marketing it before they started producing the car. And it's the same thing. You heard this really, really impressive range. And then when it came down to it, the EPA range was significantly less than what the automaker was communicating. And all of this tells me that Tesla has some alien space grade technology in their batteries and motor that give them a 2 to 5 year a 2 to 5 year ahead technology when looking at their competitors.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And it's hard to explain why nobody's catching up, but we haven't just seen any progress. So I think it's personally like a failure to go all in and build an EV from the ground up. And just until you commit that's the problem. Is like, even when I hear specs that it can go 300 miles, it can charge this fast, this EV from Porsche, it's like, well, what's the gross margin on that vehicle? That's my question. Because not only do we see all the specs for Tesla, but we see the gross margin of their cars, which is better than like the ICE equivalent. But the problem is they're building their own cheapest batteries. So the problem with Porsche and all these other Volkswagen, they're to compensate, they're going to build like a bigger battery, but only let you access a portion of it so you could still fast charge. So they're like cutting all the corners to juice the specs. But I think that's really going to take a toll in the gross margin of those vehicles. So that's why we've never had another OEM disclose the gross margin on its EVs, because it's so bad. So then it's like, that's why I don't take it seriously, because if I'm GM, what am I going to do? Or Porsche, I'm going to sell this extremely expensive car, convert all my diehard loyal Porsche fans who are buying my most high margin car to my lowest margin product. that's the business move I'm going to do. That's a huge hit to my profitability. Like we're talking about selling a car at 30% gross margin, your ICE version. My guess is the EV take in is like a 20% gross margin loss. That's a 50% gross margin swing. Like your entire business just doesn't, they say Tesla's in it. So I think these other OEMs are faking with the EV push and are totally in huge amounts of trouble.
I think it's an interesting thought. It really really is, and I think you and Matt probably talked about this on the podcast, but um, they're because they're so far behind. They didn't lay the groundwork during that time when Tesla was. Now Tesla's ahead. Like for the most part, they figured out the production challenges and gross margin, and now you've got these big automakers that are suddenly maybe caught off guard by how difficult it is to produce an EV and get the gross margins where they need to be. I think I think
Yeah.
yeah, the next 12 to 24 months are going to play out really really fascinating to me.
Yeah, and what's funny, like the last note on that is I love when people are like, Tesla, isn't their manufacturing horrible? They can't build cars. And I'm like, manufacturing to me is what Tesla is the best in the world at. They're the only car company I've seen that can pump out hundreds of thousands of like top tier smart EVs at a positive gross margin. No other auto company can do that. So as much as the media hates on Tesla's manufacturing and production, it's like actually I think they're the best in the world at building profitable EVs at scale. And that's the most important technology to have if you believe that EVs are the future.
I think they've got more time in the seat. They've got more experience doing it, and now it looked a little zany and sort of mad scientist, 10 years ago when they first started out, but now, they're single handedly moving this auto industry towards a different drivetrain, and now these traditional automakers are sort of caught with their pants down, and realize that consumers actually like electric drivetrains. They like the lack of maintenance. They like the performance, the on-demand torque. They like the software updates, and now they're playing catch up. And it could very likely mean that some of these automakers who have zero EV prototypes will not exist in 5 to 10 years, aka Chrysler, Fiat, aka Ford. Ford is another one that's like, they just were pumping out yesterday plug-in hybrids with 30 miles of range on their battery. I'm like, man, you've got a serious problem if you're now pushing out a plug-in hybrid technology that is literally 20 years old.
Yeah. I'm in the opinion that at least 50% of all these brands we think of as traditional auto companies will be bankrupt. I don't know if it'll be 5 years or 10 years, but I think more than that, they'll just be gone.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not, but because that means that
I
people are
hope
losing their
so. Why do
jobs.
I like Volkswagen and Porsche? Those companies cheated on emission scandals to like aggressively and intentionally pollute the planet more. Like the reason I'm passionate about Tesla is because we need to reduce our carbon output and emissions. I'm sorry, if you're an organization who's lying to my face and secretly polluting, like screw you, you should go bankrupt. Like that's my honest opinion. I will never buy a car from any of those companies. You betrayed my trust. That is like, like I think we're gonna look back, and that is like just it's hard to even fathom how bad that crime is. There's no one victim. So I think that's why it gets like kind of glossed over. But to me, the moral ethics that shows of your company, like, sorry, the Volkswagen, Porsche got caught doing it. Like, yeah, I think they should go bankrupt. Like, it sucks that people are going to lose their jobs, but
Yeah. Yep. So on that note, let's go ahead and wrap up with a few rapid fire questions that people sent via Twitter.
awesome.
And so the first one is: Are you the son of the Micro Machine Man? Do you know who that guy is?
Nah, who is that? I don't
Okay,
think
so
so, though,
you-
unless my dad is doing that on the side and hasn't told
you're
me.
you're totally gonna have to YouTube Micro Machine Man. In these commercials in like the early '90s, there were these toys called Micro Machines, like these super small, basically like Hot Wheel style cars, and it was like a fun thing for kids to collect. And their spokesperson for these commercials was this guy who talked extremely fast. He was like I don't know, maybe he's got some Guinness Book of World Record, or at some point he did, of how many words he can say in a minute. This is the guy. You'll have to YouTube him, and it'll all make sense.
Okay. No, I don't think I'm related to him, though.
Yeah, right. No, no, probably not. Um, okay, so next question is, did you ever get anything from your bet that you won against Mark Spiegel, and will you do another debate?
No, and I've gotten offered to debate Mark Spiegel before, but I won't because he's not fun and he's angry, and I
Yeah.
don't think he actually has a high regard for the truth, which and I do. So
He just seems really pissed off all the time. And he resolves to just insulting people. That's a true sign
like
of
I can't, yeah, I can't even say I don't even want to say on this podcast what he tweeted because I wouldn't debate him.
yeah.
But he went on a tweet, yeah. So like I
It,
just
it,
don't need people like that in my life. Sorry.
in, Unprofessional,
Yeah, and it's
lacking character.
right? And it's like, dude, like I'm 26, you're like 50, and I gotta feel like the grown up in the room. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you're I
If
don't
you have
know.
to insult people to make your point, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree. Okay, so next question: why do you talk so fast?
I just get excited. A lot of people are like, "Oh, what, how much ADD medicine do you take?" Like, I think I do have ADD. I think I have horrible ADD, but I take zero medicine for it. I drink coffee sometimes before my episodes, but I just get excited and like I don't want to waste people's time. So I feel like when the camera's rolling and hyperchange is happening, like, it's not like I talk like that for always in real life, but like I want to get you the most info as fast as possible and I'm excited about it. And that's just the vibe of hyperchange. And so I don't
I
know.
like it.
Yeah.
To your point, you're not always like that. Like on this recording, you're pretty chill.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's weird about that because sometimes people meet me in person. They're like, wait, like,
Where's
it's
the
not as high
energy at?
energy. Where's the energy? It's like, dude,
Yeah,
it's there. It's just like, uh,
you're
yeah,
bottling it up for when you hit record.
yeah, exactly. And then I'm like, because hyperchange is sort of like me documenting my investment. So I talk to it as if I was talking to myself, really excited about a stock. So I was just, that's just what,
Yeah,
how it
yeah,
goes.
yeah, totally. No, I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy and appreciate about your style on video is the enthusiasm, the intensity. To me, it's entertaining.
Yeah, trying.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got like three questions in one here from this person. How do you get
Okay.
around New York?
Walking or the subway.
Yeah. Where do you spend you? I'm changing the context of it here. So the way that it's worded is, where does he spend his money on transport? And I'm not entirely. I think that's maybe getting around the city.
Yeah, honestly, subway rides. So 275 a swipe, or if I'm feeling bold, I'll hop the turnstile. And or like, I don't know, I take Uber and Lyft now and then, I've Lyft if I had to choose, but I honestly try and walk like everywhere because I live in the East Village. So I work with companies in Soho, like, or I have like this podcast studio in the West Village. Like I just try and walk whenever possible.
Where does autonomy fit into a big city like New York?
Autonomy is huge. I think the biggest thing about autonomy that gets me pumped is like we've designed our entire, and this isn't really New York has this problem, but we've designed our entire cities for cars. And I think it's kind of ugly that everything's gray and just like whenever I go somewhere that's not like Seattle or New York, which is where I live, like California or somewhere like random, it's just like everything's a parking lot. And it's just like you have to drive and there's a huge parking lot and like just like I'm half Italian and I love this like vibe of Italy where like you'll walk in Venice and there's no cars, just people. Like it feels like a real vibrant community. And I think the car culture that America has really like been a detriment to the community aspect of society and humanity. And I think like we just overlook that and we just think cars are this thing that exists. But I think it's a really super inefficient and ugly way to like we use all our space in cities. And so um, so I think autonomy has the opportunity to change all of that and like actually take away parking lots and put green space there and like just really make our cities what we want them to be. And so that's where I get really excited about autonomy. And then the other thing is like it's going to be safer, it's going to be cheaper to get around. Um, it's just a better world. And so I don't know how it's going to play out though, because yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Sean, but that's where I'm like at a loss. Like, how does it actually get here? When does it get here? Is it going to get here? Which company makes money on it?
I
Yeah, I
think it's
hope it's
inevitable.
Tesla.
It will
Yeah.
definitely happen for all the reasons that you explained, but probably most importantly is safety. People will be safer on the roads and out in public when a vehicle can drive itself and talk to other vehicles. I mean that's going to be the primary driver, and potentially sometime in the future, maybe not in my generation, or my lifetime, but it may like the common perception will probably most likely be seen as too dangerous for a human to drive, and it could potentially be outlawed in some places.
Right? I love how we're gonna live through that change of for where it's illegal for a robot to drive to at 180 flips where to where it's illegal for a human to drive.
Yeah, yeah, or a human can drive. You just will pay more on insurance uh, for you to have that option to drive, sort of like a sports car, right?
Or it might just be 100% illegal because that's where I think it's weird. It's like, okay, so I'm a human driving, but every other car is autonomous. Like, that's where I just see it going a million ways. Like I even have some people text me like this guy who's actually a Hyperchange Patreon supporter. Shout out to Dave Rand. He's a super into motorcycling, and he always makes this joke about how like he can already like play all the Tesla cars on autopilot and knows which ones they are, and they like he can just drive past them super easily and cut them off because they're so cautious and like so it's already. So it's weird, crazy because like they're trying to learn the habits of the road, but people are changing their habits because they know there's an autonomous vehicle there. So I think these are the types of challenges where it's like, I don't know, yeah, it's really hard to think about how that actually plays out.
It might be fun to have the option to manually drive a car, like have a human drive it in an enclosed environment, because it's still really fun. You
Oh, I
can.
think that'll be a thing, like racetracks where you
Yeah,
go and drive.
yeah, agree. All right, next question. How many stocks do you have now? I think that this is Tesla stock, which I think you already mentioned earlier on. But
Shares.
how much Tesla shares do you own?
87. I'm pumped
Yeah, yeah. So,
as of
um,
today.
yeah, that's great. Okay, so next question. Any concerns on adoption rate because Model 3 is so different? I love my Model 3, but I do not notice people can react negatively just because it doesn't operate like a normal car. So, any concerns about adoption of
Yeah,
electric vehicles?
and that's exactly what I think I was mentioning earlier. Like that to me is the Tesla's competition is the internal combustion engine. Like that's why I think there's kind of a demand cliff. That's why I'm less certain about demand, not because Tesla's winning, but I just think like it's such a big change. It's going to take a while for it to go from that like, 2% now to 10 to 15 to 20% of car sales. It's just hard. Um, and like my parents both want to get Teslas or like have thought about it. I don't know if they're actually serious about it, but then like the conversation always goes to, like, where am I going to plug it in? Like the garage is filled with stuff. My dad doesn't really have a garage. So is he going to park it on the street and like run a cable over the sidewalk where everyone walks? And like, you know what I mean? Like they're just kind of like, so,
Yeah,
who knows?
yeah. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about electric cars to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think that you have to stop at a charging station to charge, where in reality, most people, and your dad's probably the exception, but most people will, charge while they sleep overnight in their garage or at their house.
Right. So
So
you need at least one empty garage space. So that's why I was trying to look into how many garages, and it actually seemed like there's a lot, but the problem is the census data groups in carports with garage. So it's like, what does a carport mean? Is there a plug there? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It probably varies from country to country too. Um, I think garages are pretty common in America or in North America.
more so
Europe.
than in Europe, I would
Yeah, I was
say.
gonna say, yeah, yeah, Europe for sure. You have a high density of people in the city center that live in the
What
city center.
One thing I'm actually toying with Arcimoto, I'm curious what you think of this idea. The way I thought they could get around it is have like a removable battery. For those who don't know, Arcimoto is like the tiny three-wheeled EV. Like if you could remove that battery, like this is what my buddy does with his boosted board, and he'll like charge it at my place when we're hanging out, and then he can go back and boost home. And so that you could do it with the Arcimoto, you could charge it, like bring it inside. But the Tesla battery is way too big to bring inside. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but that's like one
Yeah.
idea I have for all these electric vehicles is like the bring inside charging. Because I've noticed the smaller ones are doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of ways to attack the challenge. One of them is to partner together with property owners. Let's say you live in a condo or a townhome. Those are challenging areas to plug in a car because
Yeah.
you typically don't have an assigned spot. You could also partner together with cities who do street parking, or sorry, street charging stalls. Right, so you find a street to park on. You're parked next to the curb. You just the city installs plugins for street parking, and it car charges that way. I
Actually,
think.
yeah, I saw a really cool startup that does this. EV Match. Have you seen them? Where
Mm-mm,
you like it's like an app where you can rent out charging spots to other EV owners, like a network. So
mm-hmm.
it's like if I have a charger that I'm not using, I can just let people charge there, and like it makes way more charging available, and it like lets people make money.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a really good idea. I like it. All right, so next question here. How long until you get to 100 shares of Tesla?
Well, I'm at 87 now, so I hope like
Next
in like
month?
2 to 3 months, if I
Mm-hmm.
can like save up all my extra money, then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
it doesn't run up.
Yep. Totally. Tesla's fiscal strategy for this year: raise capital or debt, equity. I think we already discussed that one, right?
If they're desperate, raise a little cash. Otherwise, like go all the way.
Yeah. You wake. This is a really good one. This is my favorite question. You wake up in 10 years in the future. What is the world like?
I saw this one. That's so tricky.
I think it's most likely autonomous. Hopefully, it's electric mobility. Hopefully, in 10 years, we're not having to wrestle with smelling exhaust fumes. Um, every house could have you know be its own energy producer, producing energy through solar, storing it in batteries. Hopefully, it's a lot cleaner world,
Cleaner world.
a lot less pollution.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I hope will happen in 10 years, but none of them I think are certain, which is like I hope we use less plastic. I hope we pollute less, create less garbage, transition to EVs, autonomy. But when I think about like really certain things that are going to happen in 10 years, it's like our lives only become increasingly digitized. And the meaning from our lives, this may sound messed up, but like I think the like happiness from our lives will be more and more, and success will be more and more dictated based on like what happens online. Like I think there's this notion that Gary Vee has where it's like if you're not online, you don't have a presence, like you do not exist.
Yeah,
And I think some people think that's crazy, but like there's so many people in finance, lawyers, doctors, these industries that think they're kind of like too sophisticated for that I think are totally looking the wrong way. I'm placing my bets because I think people who have personal brands on YouTube and Twitter and whatever these 4 or 5 or 6 social networks that become entrenched as a new NBC, CBS, ABC, the media pipelines of the new era. And if you have a following and you were early there, you're going to have incredible potential, and individuals are going to have a lot more clout than brands. And so that's personally like, and I think trust and authenticity will go up. Like the truth will win. Like all this whole Me Too movement, I think that's just the start of there's transparency now and everything comes to the surface. And I think that's good in a lot of ways. And so, uh, that's the only thing I really feel strongly about in the future, because this whole EVs, I think EVs will be inevitable. But even if like I'm convinced that Tesla will win, like I could see Amazon. I think Amazon will be a huge player in EVs in 10 years. That's something. So there's a couple of predictions.
some
I don't know.
moonshot
Do you have any,
Mondays.
Sean? And do you have any others?
I subscribe to the idea that uh, today's social media platforms are today's NBC, ABC, and CBS, and and uh, we'll see more like the way that we see celebrities now. People who have the largest followings online will be those new celebrities, and we're already seeing that today. And we're in a microcosm of that in the Tesla community. You probably experienced this well at the Model Y event. I mean, there were people coming up to me saying, "Hey, Sean, watch your stuff. Can I get a selfie?" Type of thing.
Yeah.
There's a weird thing for me because I've never been in this to like seek, you know, fame or any sort of like celebrityism, but I think that will happen more and more. I do agree with that. I see this in the real estate space too, where you have people who've been selling real estate for decades. People who were in their 50s and 60s who didn't grow up with technology, didn't grow up on the internet and computers, who just don't embrace it because it's new and it takes time to learn and understand. But the people who do embrace the technology and these new forms of media will be the media entities, the media agencies that own the content in communication platforms. So I definitely agree with that, and that's for every single industry. If you understand how people consume content today, you and me and anyone who is under 40 is not paying for cable, is
Totally.
watching things on demand, is watching things at their convenience and watching whatever they want. And that's what makes YouTube in particular such a powerful platform, because any topic, anything that you can think of, any interest that you have, you can go search it, find the people who have the largest following, subscribe to them, and then you get that content, pushed out to you. And you can watch it whenever you want.
Totally. And I almost phrase it as like people ask me like, "Oh, what's your plan with hyperchange? What are you doing with the future?" And like I sometimes I just don't have a good answer, but my only thing I keep coming back to is like I think we're in a gold rush moment in history, but it's unique in that the gold rush is not based on luck, it's based on hard work and talent. And everyone has the opportunity to like when I'm talking about gold rush, I'm talking about like creating so much wealth in such a small period of time that like your quality of living and just opportunities in life are just radically changed. Like, and I don't think people really realize how much everybody with access to a smartphone or a laptop can participate in this. And like, so I'm sort of doing that myself, but I just think like, and this is not a gold rush where it's luck, it's hard work and talent. Like, if you have hustle, there's never been a better time. Like, there is no excuse. And so that just gets me really excited. And actually, the other thing I was thinking about the last 10 years that I just wrote down is my biggest theory is the space bull case. I think entire society, we're going to go into one of the biggest stock market runs in humanity, and like there's going to be this huge bull euphoria over humanity expanding to Mars and space and us becoming a spacefaring civilization. And like think that's 0 to 1. Like that's the most exciting growth story that I can think of, that oh, we're saturating this planet, everything's bad and ending, to wait, now we're going to Mars, where are we going to go next? And that change in psychology could drive one of the biggest bull markets in history. And I think we're setting up for that. And in 10 years, that's going to be a lot closer than today.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much potential if you spend enough time looking and watching and following where technology is heading. I think it does make a lot of sense that we'll be a multi-planetary species, and there's a lot of revenue potential, wealth to be created off of that, not just by getting people to another planet. But I mean, when I look at it through my lens, through a real estate agent, someone's going to need to buy that land, right? You're going to want to set up a shop, build a home. Someone's going to need to buy the land and build the property and live on that other planet. And so you basically reset this, like all the wealth and profit that we've seen over the last just 100 years. You sort of reset that in a new context on another planet, and you create this whole new opportunity for. I've never even thought about this, so I'm just sort of talking off the cuff here because you mentioned it. But to me, that will definitely happen.
Yeah, so much. And that's what Elon Musk has said. Like, there's really what he's building with SpaceX is like, someone actually told me this analogy. It's like what the railroads were back in the day, to like the infrastructure to get you to this new place. And that will, like, it's hard to even imagine, it's just laying the groundwork for all sorts of other entrepreneurs to come and create what will be the Mars society.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Last question here. What is your most bullish and bearish case for Tesla?
We can go, yeah, I can go quick on this. All right. Most bullish case is that the entire way we consume, produce and store energy is changing and is going to permanently inflect, or not permanently, but like a huge, century transition, once in a century transition to electrification. So cars are going to go electric, planes are going to go electric, power plants are going to go renewable, and everything's going to run on batteries. And Tesla, if they're the leading company with the leading battery technology, is going to capture the bulk of those profits and gains. And I think those are $2 trillion industries. We're not even talking about autonomy. So, the bull case is a couple trillion if they can reinvent the way energy works in society. That's what gets me super excited. The bear case is they're not, they can't sustainably produce a profit because not enough people are buying EVs fast enough. So, but even then, it's like, I don't see that happening. I think the biggest bear case for Tesla is like Elon Musk sends a really stupid tweet and gets himself fired. Something happens to Elon Musk. Uh, or there's a fleet-wide hack. That's and like autopilot gets hacked or something big happens like that. Or the fourth big case is like Tesla's been lying and there's fraud. And so all the numbers that I'm reading are wrong. But I don't think that's true. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a well said and a good way to wrap up here. Um, you started a new podcast. Why don't you shout that out and tell people where they can find that?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube, Hyperchange TV, and I have started putting a podcast on my YouTube channel and all my other content as well onto audio platforms as well. So if you like listening, I'm on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, or YouTube. You can find me at Hyperchange TV. Just search Hyperchange on any of those platforms.
Cool. Well, Gali, it's been great to chat it up, and hopefully, when this gets pushed out to people's phones and computers, they'll really enjoy just a almost like a fireside chat. Us sort of talking as friends as we normally do, and letting people into the conversation.
Yeah, I had a blast. This is awesome. And
Yeah,
congrats on the new podcast.
thank you.
I still think you should be uploading it to YouTube, audio
Okay,
only. But
okay. Now I'm pressured. Now I'm
You
pressured
know
to
I
do
have
it.
to
So
come in with one suggestion of how to tweak your personal brand. Come
all
on.
right. Yeah, totally. No. Okay. I'm gonna do it. Okay. I will definitely do this recording. I think people will enjoy watching it, even though I haven't showered. I'm wearing like my chill, relax, in the house clothes. But I will definitely publish this one, and who knows? I might just start video recording my other ones as well.
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, thank
Cool,
you
man.
so much, Sean.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, good to chat. We'll talk soon.